Now, I don't understand why some parents act so surprised when their kids go no contact, knowing damn well you treated that kid like a servant more than you treated them like a child.
I don't think they knew.
Now, don't get me wrong, there's some amazing parents out there. But then there's a select group of parents that traumatize their kids, that never allowed their kids to speak, never created a safe space. And to be honest, you're one of the reasons why your child deals with so many different issues like anxiety, because you stressed that kid out. That kid never was allowed to be a kid because you forced them to grow up fast. Now, a lot of parents are going to say, I was young, I tried my best, I did everything I could. That still doesn't mean that you ever had the conversation where you apologize for all the wrongs that you did to your child.
The worst part is,
Okay, welcome. You're going to discuss why I went no contact with one of my parents. I just made another video kind of highlighting many people's experiences of why they went no contact. Jack Morgan did an excellent topic on that subject, so go subscribe to his channel. I'll leave it in the description. But at the end of that previous video, I told you I would kind of highlight all the steps that it took for me to reach that point of why it was in my best interest to go no contact. Now, what this gentleman just pointed out is a lot of these parents, they've treated us growing up more like servants than children in a lot of regards. I grew up on a farm, and many days I was just given this entire huge list of chores that I would be expected to complete by the time they'd return from work or home from work. And if it wasn't done, I would be threatened with physical abuse to get my ass beat. And it's one thing to have like your kid clean up after himself or clean his room or help pick up the living room or whatnot. It's another thing to have a kid clean up everybody's messes, do the dishes, do the laundry, do all the animal chores outside, feeding, watering chickens, sheep, pigs, cattle. Like, that's a huge job for a little kid to be expected to do, and to have that pressure and that fear, raised through fear of needing to accomplish these things. Otherwise, there's physical repercussions, abuse, and getting beat. And it wasn't just simple spankings for me either. It was horsewhips. It was belts. It was bamboo tiki torch sticks, right? I got chased around the house one time and I finally ran inside the house and our basement door was open. I about fell down the whole damn stairs and I could have broke my neck. Like, there's just too many accounts that I reflect back on. I'm like, wow, I can't believe I grew up in that type of environment at the age of like 4, 5, 6, dealing with some of that shit. But before I get too ahead of myself, I guess I'll start from my early childhood of what some of the things I experienced that I never really fully processed until a lot of years later. So as I mentioned, I grew up on a hog farm. My biological dad and mom got divorced when I was about 2. Very quickly, my mom remarried this, I don't know, Tim McGraw, country boy looking type of farm hand is what I'll call him, because he worked for a bigger farmer that had a hog farm, had a cattle farm, but it was a pretty big operation. And he lived there on site, and he drank a whole lot of Keystone and chewed Timberwolf tobacco, right? One of those country boys, missing a lot of teeth even. And I remember just right out the gate, I was so fearful of him. He looked like such an angry man, never really smiled. He had this huge handlebar mustache and a mullet, wore cowboy hats and boots and all that crap. But like, what interested her back then was she always wanted horses. She wanted to grow up on a farm because that's what I think my mom's stepmom was really into, or like her sister-in-law married somebody that had like a huge horse ranch, and I think maybe some of it stemmed from that. I don't know. But anyway, that's like some of my earliest memories is I was already living and growing up on that farm, and I had my own room, and during those early years, the house wasn't too bad a shape. Like, my stepdad kept it pretty orderly, pretty clean, which meant I really couldn't leave my toys out or anything. So you could say I developed good habits early on in that regard of not being too messy. But over time, I think my mom's addiction to like garage selling and hoarding and buying too much shit, and eventually allowing animals in the house and all that stuff, just led to very terrible environments. But that being said, he was an alcoholic. He drank throughout the day. He'd get angry if things always didn't go according to plan or in his way, or go according to his way. And there was never any negotiation or discussions or those things of nature when it came to like getting chores done or what was expected of me to do or help with. And if I ever tried to stand up for myself or negotiate or say what I could do, what I couldn't do, I'd get my ass beat. I'd be talking back, is what they call it. Which looking back, so you kind of have to talk back to have a conversation. Otherwise, you're just a dictator demanding these things from a little 4 or 5-year-old kid, right? And as I mentioned, sometimes, it was just a bare hand on a bare ass. Like, he'd make me pull my pants down to my ankles, bend over and grab my ankles, and just swat, and then immediately make me sit down on a cold chair. Like, there was a lot of extra and weird punishments that I went through during that stage of my life. But it wasn't just a hand. It was horsewhips. It was tiki torches that he chased me around the house with. It's hard for me I don't even like to revisit those times. I've done my best to move on. And the only reason I'm like speaking out against this now is because I've seen a few of these videos that Jack Morgan helped put out there. But also, I'm still getting messages, and she's still putting out videos of how heartbroken she is, of how her son won't talk to her. And it's like she just won't take any accountability for the actions that took place. She's not trying to make it right. And, I at one point was willing to forgive a lot of that physical abuse and just the neglect of just being a bystander from her and from my aunt and grandma that knew it was happening. They even apologized to me for it years later and said, "I'm so sorry. I wish I would have stepped in and handled things differently." Well, the damage was already done, right? You allowed it to happen. All you cared about were your own kids and making sure they succeeded in life. And I got the shaft on everything. So, to kind of move things forward a little bit, I'm trying to remember, I was about maybe 7th grade when she finally went through enough verbal abuse. I don't think she was ever physically abused during that, even though he was an alcoholic. I was the one being physically abused. And I think that finally got to her a little bit of how it shouldn't happen. So my grandpa, who made it rich kind of by this time playing in the stock markets, bought her second house, mind you. The first house was, I think when she was pregnant, it was a trailer house, which my dad paid my grandpa payments for. But then when they got divorced, my mom just kind of kept the house and kept the money, from my understanding. So that was her first house. The second house was when she was leaving or separating from my stepdad. And we moved into a, 2-bedroom house in the town I was going to school at, which was about $50,000 at the time, back when houses were affordable. And we lived there for a few years until she ultimately decided to get back with my stepfather. And they wanted to live on a farm again. So they found like an $80,000 farmhouse that had a couple barns that were being broken down. It needed a lot of renovations. The house needed a lot of renovations. Like, it was kind of a piece of shit, to be honest with you. But my grandpa paid that house off for her. And during my high school years, I remember just giving so much labor rebuilding the roof of the barns, rebuilding the house. I redid the entire upstairs bathroom because the one downstairs, the toilet was falling through the fucking ground and I could barely take a shit. And it was just so filthy. No one cleaned. That toilet looked so disgusting. Our bathroom, like, I didn't even want to shower down there. It was so disgusting. Nobody cleaned. It was always me growing up cleaning the house. And maybe I'm getting too far ahead, because even when I lived in town, before we moved to the country house, that house was so filthy. There was a time my dad was coming to pick me up after school because it was his weekend to have me. And he started taking pictures of all the rooms because he was about to report her to Child Protective Services. And I remember begging him not to do it, because that was at a time where I kind of just got through a fat phase where I was being bullied and picked on, and I was being involved in sports, and I finally made some friends. I was kind of becoming popular, and I didn't want to leave my friend group because that was my escape from some of that terrible environment. And it gave me hope for a better future through sports, because I thought that would at least help me pay for college, which it didn't. So I chose to stay in a very unsanitary, very messy environment. But during that time, even, we didn't have a finished basement in that house, but I remember I lived on concrete basement floors in the basement just because I could keep that place mine and picked up, right? But it still wasn't completely mine either, because there were many years where she started dog breeding, and she just let the dogs like have the whole basement to themselves while I was at school or while she was at work, and then I'd have just mountains of shit on my floor and piss to clean up on. It was terrible for me to grow up in that environment. So then we moved to the farm, and things did not get much better. They'd always be tracking in dog shit, probably not even dog shit, hog shit, because we had a lot of hogs, or cow shit from out in the pasture. They wouldn't always take off their boots, be tracking in through the house, getting on the carpet. They'd never vacuum. The laundry, whenever it was done, would just put out all over the dining room table or the floors. We could never really hardly eat on a table. The kitchen sink was filled all the time with dirty dishes. It was just a hillbilly environment. The bathroom was filthy and disgusting. The kitchen was filthy and disgusting. Like, you didn't even want to sleep in the house, really. But they had an upstairs, which was where my room was, and I kept that for myself. I picked up, like, my room was the cleanest room in the house, and we had another room upstairs where I kept like a futon couch and a old chair that they never got rid of, and put a TV and a PlayStation 2 in it and called it my living room. And that's where I would sometimes have friends over, because that was the only comfortable place other than outside where we had a bonfire. It's either like you sit at the bonfire or you go upstairs to Nick's room, because that's the only place it was clean. But those weren't great years either. I mean, by that time, I kind of already learned to just shut up and just do what I was told, which led to like years of repressed. Like, I never was allowed to express myself. I was never allowed to be myself. I think I really didn't start coming out expressively until I started joining speech and theater, but that was mostly to create these characters that I was allowed to be during a time that I was allowed to be it. But other than that, it's like, shut up, do what you're told, get these chores done, water, feed the animals that aren't even yours, that I'm going to make money off of because it puts a roof over your head and food on the table for you. Like, all this guilt trip and bullshit that was their responsibility that they're making their kid do. And they had another kid, my youngest brother, which he actually got to buy his own livestock and animals and sell them and keep the cash and money. But not only that, like in the previous video, I don't know if I mentioned, like I had to pay for my own vehicles, the Monte Carlo that I Actually, this is another thing I resent my mom for, because my grandpa actually did help me out with one of my first vehicles. But when we moved out to the country, they made me sell it because it was terrible on gas and they weren't willing to pay for all the gas for me to go to school. So they sold my pickup that my grandpa helped me with. And then she bought me a piece of shit, like $500 Mustang that you could see through the floor, right? It was, I say Mustang is, oh, a cool car. No, it was an old piece of shit that barely worked. And even the guy we ended up selling it to, like a year later, or if even that, it broke down on his way home. So I felt like we scammed the freaking guy. So she kept the money, like probably a $5,000 or $6,000 truck, and bought me a $500 piece of shit car because it got better gas mileage. And they continued to pay for my gas for maybe another 6 months or a year until they decided they still didn't want to pay for my gas, even though it was their choice to move me half an hour away from my school. So in the summers, I'd have to work for a lot of farmers because I wasn't getting paid at home for the work I was doing there. There's a couple times he promised me to, he's building these sheds for other farmers, but some of the farmers never paid, or he just kept the sheds for himself and his own livestock, and free labor. Fixed up his barn, helped him re-roof his barn. Countless labor jobs, is unpaid. But that's why I try to spend most of my time doing sports or doing theater. As much time as I could be away from home, the better it was for me. The hard part was, though, is I couldn't hardly leave home on the weekends because I couldn't afford the gas. And in contrast, when my brother finally got into high school, he got handed a free debit card to fill up his truck, the booze cruise, any night of the week he wanted. They didn't give a shit he was drinking. They knew about it. They bought it for him. My mom bought booze for my brother during those years. And not to say I was some perfect golden child. I went out and drank occasionally with my friends, but not like my brother did. Never getting sauced on that shit and trying to drive home half an hour. But that was routine for him and his buddies. And it was funded by his stepdad, his real dad, my stepdad, and my mom allowed it. There's a lot of resent, you could probably tell, just from the contrast of how I was treated growing up versus how he was treated growing up. Some resentment even from my aunt and cousins because they knew about it and allowed it to happen and justified it in their own way. I ended up going through college by myself, like filling out all the forms, getting all my bank shit figured out by myself. I did reference some of that in the last video, but I don't really care to go into it again. But I just realized early that I could only rely on myself. I felt so neglected or uncared for, which the hard part is having a parent that publicly displays affection. Like, they went to my basketball games. They cheered because they want, oh, that's my son scoring all the points. Look how great my son is on that surface. But it's like, if any of those parents at that school ever visited my home and spent a week with me living how I live, then they would really see the true side of that love, or the neglect thereof, I should say. They should see the filth of the environment I lived through and how unsanitary the kitchen and the bathroom and all that stuff was that I had to go through every day. So it's hard to witness all the gaslighting and all the, oh, I'm so heartbroken, my son won't speak to me anymore. Well, there's a reason. Just like these other people that on these videos I'm covering have been stating, like, nobody doesn't want to have parents. It takes a lot of trauma that builds up over time that makes them come to the conclusion of, oh, I got to protect myself. I got to create my own peace, my own environment that I feel safe in. Because you sure as hell didn't provide it for me growing up. Actually, I'll get into this a bit later. I'll go step by step. So, went to college, separated myself from that a little bit, and finally was able to process all the wrongdoings that happened and why I have so much anxiety and so little self-esteem and self-worth, because I felt I didn't have any worth unless I was constantly providing value to other people, constantly doing chores for them, constantly entertaining them. Like, it wasn't enough just to be myself. I had to actually serve people constantly and to receive love, to receive acceptance. And meanwhile, while I was away at college, that's when things compounded and got even worse at home with their environment. Things broke down worse. The toilet was falling through the freaking floor, and my mom's mental health was getting worse and all that stuff. So she was already preparing to leave again, my stepfather, and she almost put herself in a terrible financial position. She was about to buy this condemned house in Minden that the county already condemned once before. There's holes in the roof. The whole side of the house, there was a hole that they kind of just patched over with some cheap ass siding. But the foundation was not good. It's falling apart. It was close to a train track. It was just awful. And this synced up with the time COVID was happening. I lost my jobs at the time. And I also developed an autoimmune disease that I was trying to get diagnosed, that took me forever to go to the right doctors and wasted all the money I had saved. So at the same time, this was when my grandfather was starting to distribute a lot of his inheritance. He gave one of my cousins like $100,000 house. He gave another one like a $20,000, $30,000 car, gave away his Corvette, bunch of money, gave my brother more four-wheelers and tractor supplies and trailers and whatever, a tractor. Like, my brother has probably over $200,000, $250,000 worth of assets. My grandpa bought him even another piece of farmland so he could put his cattle on it that had a barn on it. Like, they were given so much. And I'm not going to say I wasn't given anything. I got a little nest egg that I had to spend on my medical shit. Yay. Yay, I got to spend it on that. And then the other piece of that was supposed to be my house, or at least a down payment towards a house, right? And so I remember going to him and I pleaded with him. I said, look, I don't have a job right now. I just lost it, and I don't know what the job market's going to be with COVID happening, but I'm also bleeding out my ass every single day. I'm severely sick, and I'm trying to seek medical care. I need to get my shit working again, literally, before I can make any major decision in my life. But I do know that I need a place to live, and my mom needs a place to live, because she's about to waste go into years and years of debt into a condemned house that might ultimately she would die in, is how I felt. So I found a reasonably priced house in a small ass town that was an hour away from where she still worked at the time. And I thought we could make that work. It was about a $55,000 house at the time. And originally he was going to put, I think, both of our names on the title. And this is where I made my mistake. I pleaded with him. I explained to him, I don't want to live in Nebraska long term. There's no job opportunities for what I have a degree in. It's not the lifestyle I enjoy the most. It's going to get me by temporarily. So for now, can you just put it in my mom's name, since she's already had houses? But I would like to reserve the opportunity to have a first-time home buyer's loan at that reduced rate when I am ready to move. And I figured, since I was helping her in that way, that she would be able to help me back in that way. And boy, was I wrong. Very quickly, she took over the entire house because she hoarded way too much shit from her previous house. What was supposed to be shared, our living room, became her living room. where she filled it wall to wall. She let all her dogs in. She bought more dogs into a small ass house, which I had a cat too at the time, which really stressed out my cat. And having two huge dogs that encroached upon my cat, it was not a good living environment for any of us. It got filthy fast. She never cleaned up after her dogs. The carpet was destroyed. It was just like every other place we lived growing up, and I should have knew better. I just figured because it was supposed to be our house this time that I would have more authority in how we should keep things. But clearly I was delusional at that point, thinking like she would care for her sick son going through his health challenges at the time. But no, meanwhile, she was trying to get her rebound, trying to date all these low-life pieces of filth. One guy she went on a date with, she went on a brunch at like 10:30, 11 o'clock, and he asked her to go to a Casey's gas station to buy Mike's Hard Lemonade and ended up puking all over her car. That's the type of people she was bringing into my environment, or trying to. And she did bring a few people back a couple times. Another one didn't even have a car, lived out of state, wasn't even from this country legally, I don't think, and was trying to get her to spend gas money for him to come to her, or her to come to him. Like, I don't even know. Just not making a very peaceful environment for me. And endangering me. My anxiety was so high at the time, I didn't know the impacts of COVID. I was already sick and shitting out my ass every day. I shouldn't say I wanted to die, but I think I was accepting that, well, this is the path it's going. I'm not getting better. It's getting worse. I have no support. I can't afford healthcare anymore. I was really in a bad, hopeless place, needing support, and I just didn't get it. Like, people saw how frail my eyes were sunk. I looked like walking death, my dad and brother described at one point. I was so depressed and so uncared for. I couldn't even cook consistently clean meals in my house because she'd just dirty up the sink and leave it stacked full of dirty dishes. I couldn't even cook for myself. It was terrible. And so at that time, my brother was doing pretty well, and he was going to rent a new house and had an extra room. So he took me in because he's like, I can't see you living like that anymore. And I can't thank him enough. That really got me through a really dark time because I've never been suicidal. I've never tried, I know we're all going to die at some point anyway, so I'm not trying to speed up that process. But when you become hopeless and so just bitter and resentful for the people that are supposed to take care of you, that are just neglecting you completely and making it worse, not only neglect, but making it worse. Yeah, I got to a really dark place. So, I could say my brother saved me. He did. Thank you, Zach. But that was kind of the final straw for me. It's like, all right, you claim you've always done the things for the best interest of your children, and yet you set me so far back financially. I don't have a home anymore. You've been given 4 houses, or basically 3, and then stole the 4th one. And left me with nothing. And I've been trying to figure out if there's ever a way I could forgive that. Like, I'm trying, the best thing I can do right now is just not even think about it, because every time I see a message pop up or all these fake ass posts about, oh, I'm heartbroken, my son won't talk to me and blah. Well, there's a reason, and it's because you won't take any accountability and you won't respect my boundaries. Those main two things. I've given, the The ironic thing about this is her and my aunt were trying to get me to go to therapy. They thought I needed the help. And so I'm like, fuck it, whatever. I finally got Medicaid at the time, so I'm like, I'll do it. I don't care. I need help anyway. I do. I was at a low point. I didn't know what I expected from it, but so I followed the advice of my therapist, and he said, yeah, you're in an abusive relationship. She is not respecting your boundaries. She's making your environment worse. She's not contributing or helping towards your health problems or concerns. The best move was for me to move with my brother. And he's like, if she can't listen and hear what you have to say, or like care about how she's made you feel, and has any type of remorse or is willing to try to fix that in any way, then it does you no good to waste your energy talking to her about it. And so I was trying to be like, well, I could at least maybe email communication. That way she could have time to process it, go back and read the things that are actually bothering me that she's done, so she can absorb it and not just be reactive and feel attacked or defensive or whatever that is when people get into arguments. But she doesn't respect my boundaries. She still kept trying to call and leave messages on other platforms and publicly do shit that's just not true. And I've never spoken out against any of this until right now, because it doesn't really matter anymore. I've not talked to her in a few years at this, 3 or 4 years. I don't even know how long at this point. And I'm jumping over a lot of things that happened, especially during my high school years, because again, it's just not important now, but it's contributed towards why I have so much trauma and anxiety and relationship issues. Yeah, screw it. Why not? Just to get more truth off my chest, because I feel so, even though I wasn't the one that caused it, I feel guilty because I'm the one that, like, I know I'm the only one aware of it, and am the only one that will speak out against it. And my other family, since they're the ones that profited off of it, they'll never say shit. So the other thing that bothers me a lot is in 2022, my grandfather passed away. And immediately my aunt was going through all his possessions at his house, trying to sell what's valuable or keep what's valuable. My mom was so overwhelmed and not mentally there to deal with it anyway. So like, she just trusted my aunt to make things fair between her and her, right? Them two. And the grandchildren, right? So she had no problem accepting the $100,000 for her daughter because she was getting married at the time. And even though she cheated on her fiance and then ended up having an abortion and then also had a DUI, that type of behavior is rewarded, I guess. Only because she's starting a family, getting married. That's the reward. Even though she could behave in that type of way, my aunt still believed that was justified, right? And, I could say similar things about my other cousins, like, not to say they did anything too wrong, but at the same time, they never really did anything for him. For my grandfather. I was the one. My aunt always protected her kids because she always made the excuse that they had basketball practice or concert rehearsals or whatever. She always did the work for her dad, my grandpa, to protect her kids from having to do it. Meanwhile, I did all the work for my grandpa when he asked. Cutting tree limbs, moving shit on trailers, like going through a lot of the same type of abuse that my mom and she went through that she protected her kids from, but I had to deal with it myself. Which, sometimes, yeah, it was kind of fucking bad. And other times, at least my grandpa rewarded me. Despite not having a choice in the matter, at least he rewarded me. But the problem with that is like he rewarded my other cousins and they didn't have to do shit. They were never. My girl cousin was there for him one summer when he had a hip replacement. So I will give credit where credit is due. And she got a reward for it. And I have no problem with that. It's all the extra rewards that they weren't there for him for. And they got most of the potluck. Okay? That's not all of it. The other part that really bothered me was everyone knew, too, about the house arrangement that my mom, my grandfather, and I made about my house that he was going to leave me the inheritance for. Because he left me a small chunk of cash to help pay off my student loans, which I mostly paid off by myself at that time. And then the house was the other end of that deal. And that would equate to about the same that my girl cousin received. Not my youngest brother, who received probably double than her, probably $200,000 to $250,000 worth of farming assets and all that shit. Farmland, farmhouse that he's going to inherit. Like, no one will ever reach that level. But I was at least hoping to get at least the same level my girl cousin got, because she didn't really have to do shit for him either, except the one summer, like I mentioned. But that was stolen from me, and my aunt allowed it, my grandmother allowed it, and I'll never forgive them for that. But further than that, to tell you the type of people that they are, on my grandpa's deathbed, in the hospital, he had a long-term girlfriend at that time, Sheila. And she was the one that spent all days with him. He'd be going to her house. Like, they didn't live together, but they lived in the same town, and they'd stay at each other's houses all the time, right? So they were close. It was a long-term relationship, and she's the one that initially saved his life when he first had his heart attack and brought him to the hospital. And to thank her and to make sure that she'd be okay going forward if something were to happen to him, he wrote her a $50,000 check for both saving his life and just in case if something happens. Well, Sheila was way too good of a person, and she told my aunt what he had done, and my aunt reacted like she never liked her to begin with, because my grandpa previously dated a younger woman after his other wife died from cancer. And she hated anybody he would date, because any woman he would see is just a gold digger to her. Because my aunt was aware of how much wealth he had, because my aunt was the one that helped manage his accounts after his wife died. So she knew the stack of wealth that was waiting, and she did not want any other woman to take it from her. So she told Sheila that it was a mistake, that he must have put too many zeros, and she tore up that check and she wrote a different one for $5,000. The person that spent and loved my grandpa at the end of his life got screwed out of her $50,000 gift by my aunt and received $5,000. And I feel guilty about it because no one's ever spoke up or defended her or anything. And I was so damn sick at the time. I had no energy or means to even I couldn't even care for myself. But I felt like such shit that, wow, this greedy bitch is taking all of his wealth. Because she like in this video mentioned earlier, like some of those generations, even though they were abused by their parents, they still put up with it because they knew there would be a cash reward at the end. And that's exactly what happened for her. So that's been what I've been withholding. I'm glad to get off my chest finally all these years. I still feel personally guilty for not, I don't even know what I could have done, who I could have spoke to. But I just wanted to get some of this off my chest of why I went no contact with my family. Because on the outside looking in, on all these social media posts that people look so happy and perfect and all that shit, that's just what they want you to see. Go visit their house. Go look at their bank statements. See where the money actually came from. Yeah, so that was my final straw, was her stealing my house from me and setting me back decades. I'll never probably own a home in the same regard. Especially today's market. Just no fucking way. And for her to do that shit during my lowest point in life, dealing with the health challenges I was dealing with, not knowing if I was ever going to get cured. I'm still shitting blood out my ass today. And I've had to just find my own way. And mostly through the charity of my brother, who's also severely struggling now. Like, he lost his job. Tyson closed. I did another video about that. I mean, he lost it before they closed. But yeah, like, people go through moments in life where they have a surplus and they're willing to help. And like, my dad's side of the family have really stepped up in big moments for me. And I can see their heart is pure. Even though sometimes they get things wrong, their intention is good and they have good hearts, and I can respect them for that. But can I say the same on the other side? Not for everybody. So yeah, I don't know. I'll probably always feel a little bit resentful or bitter because they just straight up abandoned me, neglected me. The ones that used to be there for me at times just straight up stopped. And I have I mean, I won't get into some of my cousins I was close to, and I have no idea really why they stopped contacting me, other than maybe the lies that my aunt fed them or my mom fed them. So, but for them to believe their word instead of asking from the horse's mouth, yeah, it hurts. It'll always hurt. And that's why I went no contact, because I can either dwell on the failed relationships and the people that were family that are supposed to be there for each other that just weren't. But that was just turning me into an angry, bitter, hateful person, and I don't want to live the rest of my life like that. So I've taken the advice of my therapist, and I've focused on the things I can control. I've invested my time into people that invest time into me, that are there for me equally, and I'm not going to allow myself to be abused anymore. I'm going to only be with people that respect my boundaries and people that are accountable for their actions. So those are my reasons why I went no contact. If you have other questions, maybe I'll do a follow-up video. We'll see. I don't like to dwell on too much negative shit on my personal life. So believe them anyway, or if you have your own stories of why you went no contact, I'd love to hear about it and what's helped you refocus and take control over your life after the fact. But anyway, I'm Nick, and I'm off.